You want to take off behind the peak so that you don't have to slow down as much. If you watch some of the best surfers in the world, they're the best paddlers.
Hip internal rotation is something that's important to work on.
It's more of a fluidity sport than it is speed. Smooth is fast. Everyone thinks you have to be quick, and it's so far from the truth. You get faster through repetition. Put in the effort on the land because it resonates out in the ocean.
Welcome to the Basis Podcast. Very excited. We have Sam Hammer and Dave Santamaria today in the house. Sam Hammer is a pro surfer, probably one of the most barreled guys in the Northeast in the New York, New Jersey region. He has a surf school, and very excited to be asking him questions about getting barreled. And we also have his co-founder and partner, Dave Santamaria of Surf Health Pro. And he's a physical therapist, and we're going to be getting into, just all the fitness, longevity, mobility, physical therapy stuff to keep you active and keep you healthy so you can keep on doing what you love. So thanks for joining, guys. Very excited to have you on.
Cool. Thanks. We're excited to be here. Appreciate you having us on.
All right. Sweet.
Yeah. Thank you so much for the opportunity. Pumped for this.
Awesome. Cool. Well, why don't we start off and talk about the thing that I'm, super psyched to chat with you about, Sam, which is just, I don't know, how do you manage to always get the craziest, deepest, wildest pits? I mean, it's pretty nuts. We'll definitely make sure to feature some of the barrels that you've gotten, but like some of the waves, the barrels that you've gotten, I mean, it looks like it could be, Puerto Escondido in some of those waves. I remember you posting a video, a wave. I think it was during like the Halloween swell when Kelly Slater was here as well. And I remember surfing that swell and being like scared out of my mind. And I remember seeing like some footage or some photos of you like getting the craziest, deepest pits. But what's your secret, man?
It's funny, like growing up, it's like I never really saw Jersey as a barrel place. I guess it just always, it took me traveling, and when I traveled to Hawaii and like Puerto Escondido and Indonesia and stuff, but really mainly Hawaii, I started looking at the waves differently at home, and it's so good in New Jersey. It's just not often. So,
yeah.
And it's when nobody wants to be in the water. So, it took a few years where I was doing a lot of winter stuff, and I'd always see photos from guys like Bruce Krishner, Dick Meserole, Ray Hallgreen, these incredible photos from the winter time in these big chocolate barrels. And then we'd experience it a little, but I think surfing in Hawaii really kind of opened my eyes to what we have in our backyard. And, we live in a very special place, especially between New York and New Jersey, New England, the whole East Coast, really. There's phenomenal waves everywhere. But yeah, it's just traveling really opened my eyes to what we have in our backyard and how good our waves and special our waves actually can be. It's really, there's not many places. I spent a lot of time in Puerto Escondido, and I've always said that Bay Head is a smaller version of Puerto Escondido. It seems like it's actually a little bit steeper when it's really doing its thing with the ledginess and the amount of water moving on the right combo swell. We're very fortunate to what we have.
So that's actually really interesting. So are you saying then that when you were coming up as a surfer, it wasn't like everybody was constantly getting barreled off their asses the whole time? Like this is actually like a relatively new thing that you kind of like figured out and brought from your travels and you brought back here, or what do you say?
No, I just think that I wasn't as open to it. I also, so let me preface this. I used to also not surf in the winters until I was basically 18. Until I graduated high school, I didn't surf in the winters. I was a wrestler, trying to keep up with Dave. But so I actually didn't wrestle that much. I didn't surf that much in the winters. I'd surf maybe 4 to 5 times from Thanksgiving to, let's say, end of February. So I wasn't really around that growing up. So I didn't see it as much. Was it happening? I'm sure. There was no social media, and I just wasn't surfing in the winter. And then in the fall and spring, like we had those days And quite honestly, I used to be very nervous in waves until I traveled, and then I got more comfortable in more solid waves. So I think it's a multitude of things. You know, we didn't have social media. It was just photographers. There wasn't as many photographers. They all had jobs. And I just think there's more awareness on it now, but I don't think that the ocean has changed that much. But, you know, it's just we're more aware of it now.
That's actually really interesting. And I mean, I think that speaks to kind of how much surfing has progressed in a lot of ways and in so many ways, not in terms of like just the average skill level. Cause if you go to Jersey on a day, on a big swell, there's like 10 dudes out there are going to be getting barreled all the time, but it's interesting because what you're describing to me sounds like, on that, average hurricane day, you would not see a ton of dudes getting barreled when you're kind of earlier. I mean, there might have been
Yeah,
some, but it wasn't like as commonplace as it is now, or
but
not commonplace, but you know what I'm saying.
yes. So two things. I grew up surfing the pier. A lot of the better hollower waves, and it gets super hollow there. Don't get me wrong, but it seems like on our really good south swells, it's not in my zone, and I had to. It is in my zone, but I had to learn where to go. You
Mhm.
know, I wasn't open to it when I was growing up, so that's why I didn't really see it. And you know, I've said this my whole life. Generally, hurricane swells are not our best swells. Sometimes they can be really good when they get really close, or if it's just the perfect direction and perfect conditions. But for the most part, we kind of live off those northeasters that should start about now. You know, that's generally our time when it's like, you know, basically November to April, May. That's kind of our time. And you know, that's when I grew up, I was wrestling.
Interesting. And so you mentioned, going to Hawaii and going to Mexico. And so what did you and how that shaped your experience? Like how did it shape things? How did it change your approach?
Just uh, when you're surfing Hawaii, I used to spend a lot of time from about 4 months every winter, sometimes 5 months in Hawaii on the North Shore. And like, when it's good, it's good. It's the best, you know, 7 Mile Miracle, right?
Yeah.
Um, and just learning how to surf that, it teaches you how to surf the waves here a little bit better. And I mean, look at Balaram, you know what I mean? Like, he was always great, but how much time did he spend in Hawaii?
Oh
You know,
yeah.
same thing with Mike Gleason. You know, he's always been great, but once he would spend, you know, 4 months in Hawaii also. And you take some of the top tube riders around, and they all spent a lot of time over there because you have to learn how to read the waves. You have to put yourself in situations that you don't want or you're nervous about. And then you come home and I don't want to say it's easier, but you're actually getting the waves that you want. Whereas in Hawaii, it's a lot harder. so,
Yeah.
so, I mean, you have to put so much time in Hawaii to get those waves,
Right.
that it just kind of opens your eyes to what's here. But now it's with social media and, you know, Jason Murray, I think, was a massive influence. When he was editor at Surfer Magazine, he really opened the floodgates to the waves that we have over here. He really was the first person to be like, you know, hey, Jersey pumps, here it is.
For sure. Yeah. Huh. And that's interesting. So do you think it's easier? So obviously separating out kind of your own natural progression, of course it makes sense. You go on this trip, or you're going spending 4 or 5 months in Hawaii. That's going to prime you to become, a barrel surfer, especially if you're surfing some of the heavy spots out there. But let's say for the average everyday surfer, do you think it's actually better to learn how to get barreled in Hawaii, or better to learn over here? What do you think?
Uh, I listen. We have great waves. You know, I just think there's more awareness to it than there
Yeah.
used to be when I was growing up. You know, like I said, the waves are always here. I just feel
Yeah.
like it taught me how to surf over there.
Yeah.
Um, you know, because when I was growing up, you'd see people getting tubed, but not like they were getting tubed when you're in Hawaii or
Right. Right.
Mexico. You know, like those people are getting trained, you know, all the
Yeah.
time. And you know, there were those guys, but you know, I grew up in Lavalette, and there was a guy named John Anderson who was really good, but I didn't really surf with him. So there was a few guys that were pushing the envelope, but I didn't really see them that much growing up. So you know, I would always surf the pier. There were some good guys there, but it's the pier is not the hollowest place.
Yeah.
It's Casino Pier in Seaside. It's not the hollowest place. It gets hollow, but it's not like the big, like the Kelly Slater swell, and where that spot was gets a heck of a lot hollower than let's say Seaside.
Right, right. Yeah, I guess the question I'm asking is, well, it's a give and a take, right? Like if you're going to surf a reef, like there are out in Hawaii, you have a much more predictable wave and a more predictable takeoff spot, but then you
Yes.
have a much gnarlier pack and you got a reef.
Yeah.
whereas out here you have like soft sand and it's barreling and there's all these peaks everywhere, but then it's really hard to like find the right peak, right? And read the wave and be in the right position when that wave comes along. So it's like this almost give and a take. I don't that, and that's where I think that there's like pros and cons of trying one approach versus another approach. I guess that's what I was trying to get at.
Understandable. I could see. Yeah, I could totally see what you're saying. Yeah, I think the reef is a little bit more predictable, but
Yeah.
once you learn how to predict what's going on here, and I mean, there's days where if you just take off behind the peak, where it's actually easier to take off most of the time.
Yeah.
All you have to do is stand there. So
Yeah. Right.
it's just and then it just comes down to controlling your speed and tempo, and that's it. But I understand what you're saying. I think places like I used to surf a lot of Rocky Point, and then when I got comfortable there, I went to Off the Wall and then Backdoor, and so I surfed all those reefs a lot, and they are way more predictable than the beach breaks. Yes.
Yeah.
100%. So I
Yeah.
do think that helps.
Right. So why don't we dive in a little bit more in terms of, you're talking about taking off behind the peak, which is obviously key. Maybe if you could break down why taking off behind the peak is so important and is going to help you get barreled, that'd be good
I
to know.
feel like
Yeah.
I feel like you like wildly oversimplified getting barreled. It's just like simply take off behind the peak and stand there. It's super
That's because you're
easy.
Sam Hammer.
Yeah.
No, it's no, listen, it isn't tube riding's all about putting yourself in the right position on the wave and then controlling your speed. I mean, those are and kind of envisioning what's going to happen before you take off, and obviously reading the wave and understanding the way the ocean's moving, especially in the sandbars, because I mean they can run off super quick or they can, slow up, and you have to be able to predict that, which is tough. But if you just, I don't know, you want to take off behind the peak so that you don't have to slow down as much. When you slow down, it's harder to get going faster again. So if you can maintain speed, you can kind of sometimes lock into the flow of the wave, and you really just have to stand there. Hopefully.
Right. And I think, yeah, go ahead. Sorry.
Yeah, but it's just it's so much of it is just controlling your speed. It's not even funny, and just keep your eye on the lip line in front of you, and just control your speed. Go off past experience so that you're not you understand the waves, you understand the way that waves are moving. And a lot of it too is figuring out which waves are good when you're in the lineup, because there's so many days where you'll see really good waves come through and nobody's on them, right? And we've all seen that. Especially, I thought that what was it, that September day at Lido? Were you there for that by any chance?
Yeah.
And
the
how
one
many?
where like there were like a bunch of pros from like out west, they were there. Yeah. I got to surf in the morning there. Yeah.
So how many good waves were coming through that nobody was on?
Yeah, I'm sure that there was a bunch.
They were all sitting, like all the waves were very far underneath, like the sand and the swell wasn't connecting, and then you had to really sit underneath, and the good waves were there. You just had to find them, and that's so much of it is just understanding the way the ocean's moving, and just having that eye for it.
That's so true, because I had a short window to surf, and I remember I was out there. And then I realized I was sitting next to Ian Crane, and we were both sitting there just floating around, and I was kind of bummed because I was like, man, this swell's not like really shaping up. They were like the big outside ones that were kind of like fat and wasn't really working. I caught a couple, and then I was like, all right, I have to run. But then when I got to shore, I was like, oh, all the barrels are just like draining on the inside on the shallow
Yeah.
kind of ledge. And I was like, oh man, I should have been sitting there. But you just get suckered out when the big sets come, right? So
Yeah. It's that place in particular is super tricky. And those 2 days were uh really tricky because like you said, the bigger ones were so much further out, and then the good ones were like really, really far in. And it took a while to kind of figure that out. And how much of a pleasure was it to watch that kid surf? Oh my God.
yeah,
He's
yeah,
one of my favorite surfers. Just
right.
so precise and fast, but that's beside the point. But yeah, it was a
Yeah.
good day.
So what's your strategy for finding those hidden gems, which is kind of the key of it all? Is it just, doing a really thorough beach observation and just really trying to pay attention? Like, how do you not get suckered out into the wrong place? Or is it just like really paying attention? Are you hunting around constantly? Like, what's your strategy, I guess, in the lineup? Hey everyone, it's Van. Hopefully you've been enjoying the podcast. Hopefully you've been listening to some good stories, getting some good tips that are helping you improve as a surfer. If so, make sure to subscribe to the podcast, leave us a review. It'll only take you literally a few seconds, and share it with your friends. That's the best way you can support me so I can continue to create awesome new content for you. So thanks.
When the waves are really good, this strategy is obviously you see stuff from the beach. So you try to picture the wave that you want to catch and where you want to sit, right? I'm someone that always paddles out with a game plan. I'm not someone that paddles out and just like figure it out there. I try to formulate, okay, I'm sitting here, I'm looking for this wave. And if it's not working, I adjust. And that's the way I approach almost every session when I'm actually wanting to surf and I'm not just cruising. I always tried to structure my sessions, and I've done that forever. Um, just because otherwise you could just sit out there and float and get lost in the ocean. So I set a lot of landmarks. I've always done that. And I just, if you're not seeing the waves that you were seeing from the beach, they're still there. I watch waves from the back a lot. So if you ever watch me surf in the ocean, I'm looking at the beach just as much as I'm looking out, just to see what that wave is doing, to see if it spits, to see how it's breaking and how the waves are reacting from the back. Just try to read what's going on and put yourself in a position to get that wave. It's just, you have to always adjust out there, especially where we are. There's a lot of current. You have to always adjust on the fly, and but there's times where you could just, if you set a landmark and wait, that wave's going to come through, the one that you want. You just have to be patient. But yeah, that's my strategy, is just kind of go out there and like I said, have a game plan before you go out, see the waves that you want to catch. A lot of times the biggest waves aren't the best ones. They tend to wash through or, close out. So a lot of times it's those ones that have a little bit more water to them that move underneath everybody that get really hollow.
Yeah. And I guess so much of it as well is just you having built this memory bank of all these waves that you've gone for and figured out, okay, these ones are bad, these ones are good. And so you really have this really precise understanding of like what a good wave looks like, which is probably just way more developed and fine-tuned than the average surfer, right? And that's what allows you to get these crazy waves.
It definitely helps. Yeah. I spent a lot of time in the ocean, and definitely seen a lot of different looks, and it helps traveling and surfing different breaks also is you get so many surfers that are so comfortable surfing the same spot over and over and over. And I was never that person. And I think having different looks from the ocean is really beneficial because it helps you understand the ocean a little bit better.
Yeah, for sure.
I mean, how many guys do you know that just go to the same spot every day? And it's like, you can surf this wave really good,
Yeah.
but what are you gonna do when you go other places? And that's just, I'm not one of those people that want to sit in one place and surf the same wave over and over.
Yeah. Well, so what's your advice in terms of like approach and equipment as well? So like I guess this may or may not be as applicable to, I think it is applicable still at a beach break, but like, for example, at Pipeline, you have like Mason Ho sitting on a 7.6 trying to catch those second reef in chip in early. And then you also have like Bear Mamiya just sitting under the lip trying to take off super
Understand.
late. Like, what is your strategy, and what would you, and obviously you're a hyper advanced elite surfer, and then what would be your advice for someone that's trying to get barreled for the first time?
That's that's a good question. There's two different ways to approach the hollow waves, right? Some people sit further out, some people sit underneath. I was always somebody that sat underneath and used a small board. You know, there was a bunch of years when I was really surfing all the time where I wouldn't paddle out in New Jersey on more than a 5'9". And it's just the biggest day, the heaviest days, it was always the same 5'9", and they were geared more towards hollow waves. But I think in Jersey, you actually don't want a ton of length because you tend to catch a little bit more because sometimes it doesn't fit the face of the wave in the pocket. That's my belief. I've also seen people get drained on 7.0s, and I have a friend that rides a 6'10" and LBI all the time, and he paddles like a champ, and he's a great surfer. And I don't know if it's 6'10", but it's pretty damn long. Do you know Randy Townsend?
I think I've heard that name. Yeah. I don't.
Yeah. So he's a really good surfer. Like he's not a slouch. And he would always approach it different. He always rode a longer board out there because there's a lot of current. And it's just what you're comfortable with, whether you want to get in easy or you want to take off a little bit later. I always tried to take off later. That's just what I'm more comfortable with, you know. As I've gotten older, I started to ride a little bit longer boards. Like, so now I'm riding, on a really good day, I'm going to ride a 6'2", and that's about, as much as I'm going to ride. And that's just because I'm older and I can't paddle like I used to.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I try, but it's a little bit hard,
Right. And so it seems like board choices, you're trying to make a decision across this continuum, right? So the shorter your board is, you're relying more on the timing and being in the right position of the wave so that you can catch the wave and use the wave's energy to get in. That requires obviously a lot of more understanding of the wave and knowledge and positioning and being in the right spot and your personal paddle power. So you have to be in really good shape. But that just allows you like an easier entry and probably a deeper barrel. Sorry, if you're riding a smaller board. But then as you get older, you get less out of shape, you get more out of shape. Then riding the longer board allows you to get in earlier. You don't need to be as fit, but potentially might not fit in kind of the most critical parts of the wave. And then you're making the sacrifice there, right? And so is that how you're thinking about the continuum and where you're deciding to position yourself?
Yes, very much so. You actually described that great because, when you take off later, smaller board, you can get way more barreled because, you can move the board better in the barrel and, just kind of adjust to things. Taking off later, you're putting yourself in a deeper spot, as you said, and that's how I always kind of approached it. And then as I've gotten older and I don't, I still surf a lot. I'm still take care of myself, obviously with Dave. And so my paddle stamina is good, but it's not quite what it used to be because I just don't have that time to spend in the ocean paddling. So when the waves are good now, I've gotten thicker boards where they used to just be, and I mean, they used to be thicker, those little 5'9s. I still have the first one, and it's one of the best boards I've ever had. But they're definitely, you just want that paddle power so that you could get moving. And yeah, it's just, I don't know. Sometimes it's nice being able to stall for the wave as opposed to, kind of tippy-toeing to the bottom every time.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But tippy-toeing's fun too.
Right. So, on this note, and Dave, love to get your thoughts on this as well. But, how important is paddle fitness if you're trying to get barreled or you're just surfing in general? Like where would you rank that in terms of priority for a surfer?
I mean, it's pretty much the whole sport. You know what I mean? You got paddle endurance so that you can sustain the effort through the whole session or for however long you want to surf for. Cause like nobody gets out of the water because like their legs are tired or anything like that. It's always your arms are shot. And then you want to have like good top end speed because you're going to have to match the speed of the wave to get into it. So if you can't produce the power to match the speed of that wave, then like you're not going to be able to get into it at the right time. You're going to be at like maybe that split second late. That's going to make a big difference when you're, super critical waves trying to get barreled, stuff like that. So, I mean, I feel like it's probably one or two, but most likely number one on the list.
Yeah.
Can I add to that real quick? If you watch some of the best surfers in the world, they're the best paddlers. John does the race to Malachi, doesn't he?
Mm-hmm.
And Jamie Mitchell. I mean, also, if you look at the way Jamie O'Brien gets down the wave face, he's a tremendous paddler. And you mentioned the Kelly Slater swell that he was here for. The best thing I saw that whole day was him. There was a set that came through, and it was the one set that was kind of bigger that you see him on. And I was looking at it, and he was like about 20 to 30 feet deeper than I was. And I was looking at it, and I'm like, there's no way I could get here. And as I'm thinking that, like, so I'm looking down the line to try to get there, and I stopped, and I look at him motor by me, and I was just like, there's no way. What the heck was that? I can't believe he just made that. The paddle to get to that wave was just mind-blowing, and nobody saw it. Nobody saw it. And it's still to this day, that's the one thing I talk about on that swell. So, yeah, just to add to that, Dave's point.
Wow, that's actually kind of crazy. Yeah, that sounds nuts. And you know what's weird to me? So, Dave, you're obviously going to teach us how to be like Kelly Slater when we're at that age, right?
That's exactly right, dude.
But what I've heard about Kelly as well is that, like, he'll go months without surfing, and then he'll just jump right back in. Like, I don't know how that is possible. It can't just be pure muscle memory, right? Like, Sam, I'm sure, like, during the summer, you don't. I mean, are there periods where you don't surf, and do you lose your fitness, or are you just like always fit because you're just a monster?
No, I'm so funny to go on that point again. Is that's when he broke his foot. So he was actually in New York City for something and called me, and he actually broke his foot. And so what did he do it at J Bay, I think? So that was one of the first times he surfed, and he paddled like that. So I couldn't imagine when he's like fully in shape.
That's insane.
I mean, there's always some Kelly Slater for a reason. Like, there's always some DNA and genetics. Yeah. Like, LeBron James is LeBron James, like, for a lot of reasons, right? There's just some attributes that he possesses that, some of us just do not have.
Right. He does look like he has naturally, like, very long arms and very big hands. So, like, it looks kind of like he just built for, like, being a paddling machine for sure. So
he's just pulling a lot of water every time.
Yeah.
Making a stroke. Yeah.
Okay. So, yeah. Wow. So paddle fitness is something you definitely rank up as extremely high and important to keep on top of. What else do you think is really important for, the everyday surfer to focus on so they can maintain their fitness and longevity and all that?
I mean, you always like kind of revert back to the basic stuff. I mean, consistency with, exercise and working out, just to kind of, you want to make sure that you're healthy, right? If you're banged up or you're not healthy, or, you're not maintaining your wellness, like, that's going to limit your ability to get in the water, feel good in the water. And then things that contribute to that are always like, it's like, kind of feel like a broken record saying it, but it's like, are you getting good sleep at night? Like, are you managing your stress levels? If work is super stressful that week, maybe it's like not a week to push your exercise or your endurance training, because like stress accumulates, right? Mm-hmm. Get your fitness, get your nutrition like really dialed in, whatever works for you. I'm not a vegan. I don't have a vegan diet or anything like that, but like, if that's what works for you and you feel good doing that, then do it. Whatever kind of works for your lifestyle and how your body responds to that nutrition plan, and like stick to it. So, I mean, it's a matter of like just being consistent, doing the basic things. And, it's like one of those things that's like simple, but not necessarily easy. Mm-hmm. So,
okay.
Which that was a lot of stuff.
Right. So, you got to take care of your body. You got to stay basically healthy. Are there, how about this? Are there any like common issues that surfers butt up against? I mean, Sam, as you've gotten older, you talk about how, you're not as paddle fit anymore. Have you had any, joint issues, shoulder, hip, any lower back? I mean, what are some of the things that you think, I don't know if you've struggled with any of them, Sam, or Dave, with your clients. Like, what are you seeing in terms of like things that beyond just your normal, just foundation level of health that, you think that surfers should pay really close attention to?
I think things that I've stressed to Dave are like hip mobility. That's massive. It's so important to have loose hips. It's think about surfing. It's a lot of hips,
Yeah.
right? Good shoulder mobility. Dave's mobility stuff is pretty good. It's really good. Not pretty good. Sorry, Dave. It's really good. It's just he has me on some of the programs too, and it really does help. And I know for some people that I coach that he trains, I've seen tremendous growth with some people, where just from the mobility exercises and not getting them. I have this one client. He's always done CrossFit. Guy's super fit. Oh man, like he couldn't fully rotate his shoulder when he's paddling. I was like this, same thing with his hips. He can never get his hips through. And he's worked with Dave for the past year, and now I'll surf with him, like not as much, but he's improving because of the stuff he's doing on land and doing in the gym. And it's all from Dave's mobility workouts and movements. It really, that's one case where I've seen it so dramatically, the improvement. It was really mind-blowing, because there was one point I didn't surf with him for like 2 months, and he was pretty beginner, but he's just hooked like most people that surf. And just the improvement from his mobility was like, it allowed him to do so many more things effortlessly that made his surfing improve so drastically.
Yeah, I can see that. Like I have two buddies, they're getting a little older as well. And, we were talking about pop-ups, and I was like, oh, let me see your pop-up. And they both, it was their hips that were inhibiting their ability to do like a smooth, fluid pop-up. Is they just couldn't get their, their knees underneath them. And it just, and that's the foundation for surfing. If you don't pop up, you're not going to be surfing the wave. Right. So
100%.
So Dave, what are your, what are your recommendations then in terms of the hips and maintaining that mobility? What is the root cause, and how do you ensure that you keep healthy hips so you can surf for a long life?
Yeah, I mean, that's like, the $1 million question pretty much. If you can nail that down, like
Right.
you're good to go. One huge component of it is just consistency. It's just a little bit over a long period of time is going to add up. So, it's like a retirement plan. If you're 25 and you start working on it, it's going to be a lot better for you. Just daily mobility. You want to develop the ability to like sustain some of those positions and move comfortably in there, and like a deep squat and deep lunges and things like that. As you get a little bit older, you're going to have to work a little bit harder at it if you're late to the game. But I mean, obviously it's never too late to start, So I think consistency, day in and day out, and just, chipping away at it. You don't have to spend, hours and hours every day. You can if you want to, but like a little bit at a time, stay steady, stay consistent. Eventually you'll kind of get there, It's a longevity game, right? We're not necessarily playing for tomorrow or next week. I mean, if you have a surf trip coming up, maybe that changes. But like, if you're looking at it from, I want to be surfing for the next 30 years or 40 years, then, it's just steady, consistent, like slow burn at it. Just keep working at it.
Yeah. I totally agree with that. And that's kind of what I've had to implement for my own injuries, because I have shoulder issues, I have hip issues, all of that kind of stuff. But the problem is sometimes you'll go see like a PT, or you'll like read something on the internet, and it'll be like a 20-minute workout, and like you stick with it in the beginning, and then like after a couple of days you're like, oh, screw this thing. You just get lazy, and then you just like, oh, it feels better, and then you stop doing it. Right now I'm kind of like, I have like this routine where I do a little bit, but I do it consistently most days. It's more like 5 minutes. But that prehab, that continual maintenance has been a lot more effective than just like repair after damage is already done. So that's definitely, something I've found personally as well.
Yeah, I mean, I think that goes for like just healthcare in general, where as opposed to being so reactive, if we could be a little bit more proactive and get ahead of things, like it's a lot more easy to manage those things as opposed to like, you know, worst case scenario, like waiting till you have a heart attack.
Yeah.
You know,
Right.
you've been building plaque up in your arteries for like 20 years. So
Totally. So are there any specific, I mean, so you mentioned like moving, staying mobile, like being in a deep squat and moving around, making sure you're comfortable there. Are there any other specific exercises? I know on your Instagram, you show a lot of things, but if you are going to give a 5-minute hip mobility, kind of prehab assignment to one of your clients, what would that be? What would that look like?
um,
And I'm sure it really depends on the client and their individual. That's why they need to like,
it
yeah,
totally depends on the
right.
client. Yeah. So, I mean, I think hip internal rotation is something that's important to work on. That helps you kind of squat and get that knee up underneath your chest. If we're talking pop up, like if your ankle mobility is limiting you, that could slow your pop up down. If you're not able to just kind of like lift that toe up and clear your toe as you're pulling your knee up underneath your chest, then you can be catching your foot, catching your toe, or you're just not like, you can't quite get it all the way up to where you want it to be.
Interesting.
So
I never even thought about that.
like
Yeah, that makes sense. Huh.
yeah. So make sure that you have good. It's not really that common of a limitation, but make sure you just have full knee range of motion. Like you should generally be able to bring your heel to your butt pretty easily, even if you have to use your hand a little bit. But I mean, getting into like a deep lunge stretch where you're kind of dropping your elbow down the inside of your shin, where your legs are split. I mean, I think that's a great movement. Like a straddle stretch. I mean, these are definitely some of the things that we have on our Instagram. And like when you watch Sam do some of this stuff on our Instagram, and when I watch him in person, and you're like, well, yeah, I mean, the guy, he moves really well. Like he has like really great kinesthetic awareness. Like it doesn't take a lot of cueing for us to get through some of that stuff. I'm like, do this, this, and this. And he's like this. And it's like maybe one other cue, and then he's got it really well. And you're like, like we were talking about that, there's just like some genetics and things that people have. And you watch Sam move and you watch him do some of this stuff. You're like, yeah, man, no wonder that guy's like rips in the water and can do what he does in the surf, because like he can move that well.
Right.
And he's not like restricted by his body,
Right. But not everybody's like that, and some people are going to have to work
everybody's
to make sure they're there, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, but that comes from, I worked out since, like I said, I grew up with a wrestling background, and so I trained, like when it wasn't really that cool. And I had buddies calling me jock, and I was like, yeah, but I'm gonna be better when I'm 40 because of this.
It's actually,
and that's just I always, Gary Player, he always took care of himself, and he said, if guy walks relentlessly, and I don't know, that's just kind of the way I always looked at it. And my dad was pretty healthy also, and he kind of pounded that into me too, maybe a little too.
Yeah. No, that's interesting because, for a long time, surfing culture doesn't have that training mentality, but it sounds like you took that from wrestling and applied it. And, that's why you're surfing so well and healthy and all of those things, right? So what would so for some of your coaching clients, the pop-up obviously is key. Do you, what are your recommendations there in terms of technique? Do you have them train it on dry land? What are you, any thoughts around that?
Yeah. Coming from Sam's recommendation, like I will like build into their program, like especially some of the newer greener surfers, I guess you could say, right? I'd be like, all right, at the end of your workout, let me get like 3 sets of 10 of pop-ups, do like a set of 10, 30-second break, another set of 10. So you're kind of working on it in kind of like a slightly fatigued state. So, once you're kind of fresh and strong and full of energy, like it'll be really dialed in. It'll come to you really easily and really naturally and like nice and smooth. So
yeah.
Sam,
I'm
anything?
Yeah, I'm a firm believer of doing stuff on land. It does work. There's no denying it. I always try to get people to focus on the movements and do them slow. The one thing that, you know, I've always noticed is if you watch older men surf or older people surf, they're fluid, right? They're not fast, they're not quick, they're fluid. And it's it's more of a fluidity sport than it is speed. Uh, you know, Smooth is fast, right? And it's the same thing with popping up and getting your feet up. It's a lot of times you're getting adults that are trying to go a million miles an hour, and the first thing I say to them is slow down. Just slow down. There's no reason to rush. You have more time than you think. So, that's the one thing, is just stressing it's not about speed. Everyone thinks you have to be quick, and it's so far from the truth. You get faster through repetition. Very rarely do you see professional surfers spring up as fast as they can.
Hmm. Yeah. It looks like it potentially because the wave is going so fast, but they're taking more time than most people think. I agree with that.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's interesting because one of the there was a piece that I posted, and I think it was Corey Colapinto, and he was just taking his time popping up, and then I got all this flack on people being like, "Oh, you can't do that on a steeper wave," and I'm like, "You're right. In some circumstances, you do have to pop up really quickly, but sometimes you can actually kind of take your time popping up even on a slightly steeper wave if you have the right angle on it and whatnot. But it obviously depends on the wave, and if you're getting in early, that makes it a lot easier as well. But
Yeah. I always say Jamie O'Brien, right? The guy is such an incredible paddler. He got down the wave face so fast, but he wasn't rushing most of the time, like obviously there are those situations where you have to, but when you rush, things get sloppy and there's more room for error. So I don't know. I've always been a firm believer of trying to slow things down as much as you can.
yeah. Well, on this is kind of a little bit of a tangent, but I think it'll be interesting to the audience. What are your, because the interesting thing about observing Jamie O'Brien, just like, and part of the reason why he can be so fluid and casual is that I don't think he's really that scared when he's out at Pipeline, even though it's so gnarly, right? He's been in that situation so much that he's comfortable. But you mentioned that you weren't always in the beginning comfortable, with bigger waves and hollower waves. Like, was there any shift for you that was necessary in order for you to, you surfed Hawaii, Puerto Escondido, like super heavy, gnarly places? Like, was it something that came natural to you, or is it something that you had to overcome? What are your thoughts there?
It's a good question. I had some friends that New Jersey had a really good bodyboard scene. It's gonna sound kind of funny, but like bodyboarders found the best waves, you know. Um, and so a lot of my really good friends were bodyboarders, and they in Hawaii they would push me, and I looked at them like older brothers. They'd push me, and because I mean it gets big around here, but not like Hawaii, not like Puerto. It just gets, there's so much more water, and uh, so yeah, just getting out there more often, and being uncomfortable is okay. Everybody has to push the threshold at some point. And yeah, there's times where I still get nervous and scared, and there's still stuff that I'm not going to paddle out it. Um, but you just have to get acclimated with it. I think when I was younger, I was, you know, just more fearless too. And I think that kind of positions you in the long run, and, you don't have as much things to worry about in life, I guess, which is kind of, you don't have kids, stuff like that. Um, so I just think it allows you a little bit more leeway, and it allows you to grow a little bit in different conditions, because you're not as nervous as you would be, like, it's funny. There was a time where I was surfing a few years ago when I first had my wife was pregnant, and Mike Leeson, you're familiar with Mike, another pro surfer. He's like, "Man, you're being such a bitch. Like, fuck." And I was like, I don't know. I don't know what it is. And, it's just, I was thinking, and I was I was just being, yeah. And then a few years later, he kind of did it too. So I came down on him. I was like, yeah, it's different.
Right,
It's
right, right.
a little different.
But
Yeah. So I just think putting yourself in those situations and you just become more acclimated to them. It's not as rare. And, it's something that you've seen before where, there's, you have to grow into some of these waves. It's not like you just come from like, I don't know, a wave pool and you're going to go surf Mavericks.
right,
It's just not going to happen.
right. Yeah, it's the exposure. The exposure is absolutely necessary, and probably it's a good thing that now you have kids. You're not charging in the same way that you used to. You're not like hucking yourself off the ledge in Puerto Escondido. That's probably a good thing, right?
Yeah. Yeah, somewhat. I mean, it's just, I would always travel places to the point where I got sick of it. So I haven't been back there in a long time. It's just because I used to spend so much time down there. Um, I still have desire to surf some good sized waves, but nothing like what I used to do. It's just not, yeah, I'm not as comfortable anymore.
Man, I've never been down there. But the thing that kind of strikes me the most when I think about that spot, because it's so big, but it's also a beach break, is you probably have to be so selective with your waves. Like here, I mean, when the waves get big, yeah, you have to be careful and selective, but like you're probably not going to die if you eat it. But over there, if you pick the wrong wave, it just looks like catastrophic, it seems like. So, I mean, what was it like? Did it just require like the utmost patience to just like find that one wave? Because what happens if you pick the wrong wave, Like, what was that process like?
For most things, you only see the highlights. You know what I mean? You don't see the whole
Yeah.
session. It's like when you're in Puerto, when you look at videos of Puerto, you're not seeing guys catch 10 waves and get spit out, right? So you're seeing a handful of waves of the highlights of the day. So, there's a lot of picking the right waves, especially at a place like Puerto where it's moving fast, it's big, it's shifty. You have to just trust what you see and kind of run with it. And it's very much the same here. You know, you just have to trust your gut and I guess just go.
Yeah,
um,
that's crazy.
just try to go on experience.
Yeah. Well, I'm just curious, like in a session, like let's say a 3 hour session, or maybe they're longer sessions because, bigger waves, longer sessions usually, but like how many good waves would you get? I mean, and I guess it would vary from person to person, but like, what was that like?
On a good day here, if I get like 5 good waves, I'm pumped. There's days where I've gotten none and the waves are
Yeah.
pumping. You know what I mean? It's just it's not. I don't know. You're not always going to get the wave you see. Very rarely do you get the wave that you want. How many times is someone like, "Oh, I got the wave that I want"? I know it never happens with me. I always see the best waves, and I never saw myself on those waves, and that's an issue.
Yeah.
So, um, but I just think, especially in today's society, you see so much on Instagram and social media, surf lot, whatever, where you're not seeing the full session. You're just seeing the highlights. That there was that swell in Lido that good day, and I got one pretty good right, and I waited hours for that wave. Hours. I was waiting for that one wave to come through, but I was catching waves, but not like the ones that I wanted. And you just have to be patient and be selective and just be patient and wait for your opportunity.
Yeah. That session actually made me really reflect on that because when I ended up chatting up with Ian a little bit, and I was, we'd been out there for like 2 hours or whatever, and like it didn't seem like he'd caught any waves. I hadn't caught really any good waves, and he was so stoked, still. And I was like, and he said he was like, yeah, the session is just getting started. That's the way he posed it. I mean, I had to go, but I was like, that just showed me like the different level of patience that he had, right? Like he's willing to wait 2 hours for like a really good wave, whereas I was getting frustrated and like I want a good wave, and it really made me reevaluate what like my threshold should be for how long I should wait for a good wave. So that was interesting for me actually. So
A lot of the days here, you're positioning the whole time, right? And then waiting for, like I said, that one wave that you want. And Yeah, it's just, you have to be patient. It's so important to be patient. If you don't like what you see, and that's in your mindset, or you're getting frustrated, you're like, oh, I gotta catch the next wave. Might not be the wave that you wanted. It could be right behind the wave that you caught. So you just gotta, be patient, wait for the wave that you want, and you know, he got some incredible waves. Justin Quintala got some nuts waves. The surfing that swell was insane. But it's just, yeah, you just got to be patient and choose the waves that you want in those situations. Don't get frustrated.
Yeah.
I think it like could come down to a little bit of perspective also, which is like super cliche, but like ultimately you're just out in the ocean paddling around, like waiting for a wave. So like your situation could be a lot worse. And if you got to wait like 15 or 20 minutes to maybe get like the best wave of your life, then I mean, things aren't so bad for you,
Yeah. Very true. We're just like kids in the candy store, can't restrain ourselves. That's kind of the
totally.
that's
I know.
that's the big problem.
The candy store is dry right now, though. We need to go on another run. We need a big one. We're overdue for a solid swell here.
Yeah, I know, definitely. Well, hopefully this weekend. Well, I think we're gonna work towards closing up, but Dave, any last tips or pointers on the health, the PT, the rehab front? Any kind of key top recs that you'd give to my community and audience?
Yeah, man, I think, just keep moving and do what you can, because if you stop moving, that's when, things start to fall apart a little bit,
Yeah.
So whether it's our program, it's whether you're doing your own thing, keep doing it, keep sticking like to the basics, sleep, nutrition, exercise. If you want to take it to the next level, then, we're there for you. Work on your posture. Make sure you're sitting up straight throughout the day and change positions.
Very, very true. Very true.
That's the PT. That's the PT side.
Nice.
Nice. You got to sit for 8 hours, stand for a couple hours, maybe walk around a little bit, get some steps.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's
the easy stuff, man. It's not these huge things. You're not moving mountains. It's the easy little stuff you just do day in and day out.
Yeah. But luckily they'll have you with a whip and getting on them if they're not sitting up straight and like getting...
I talked to like a client the other day and he was just like, he's like, I'll be honest with you, like there is, obviously it's not a free service, so people are, paying money, so they want to do the workout. And he's like, yeah, I mean, I know I'm paying for the workout, but like, I just don't want to get a text message or a call from you and just you'd be like, where were you last week, man? What happened to you? So he's like, that was like one of my biggest motivations for just staying consistent and staying on the program,
Well, that's the biggest part in some ways is the accountability. I mean, how many people, can actually stick to a plan? That's really hard. And I'm sure it really helps to have you guys in their corner to make sure that they do what they're supposed to do. Right. Are there any case studies, examples of clients that you've worked with that, you've seen kind of really tremendous results?
I probably have two. I had one guy, he was like in really bad shape. His like knees were pretty much shot. And he called me up and he was like, we started talking and he hadn't surfed in like a year and a half. And, he wasn't an all world surfer or anything like that, but, he got in the water, been surfing for years and years. And he's probably in his early 50s. And, he's like, I can't really move around. If I walk for a little bit, it hurts. And, we probably worked together for probably like 2.5, 3 months. And then he like out of nowhere sent me a video of like him surfing, it was like ripping. He was on a longboard and, but he's like, dude, I haven't surfed in a year and a half. Like this is like a life-changing thing for me, So, I mean, it's not always like those guys that are like sending me pictures of like being on big waves and getting barreled and stuff. Like it's even some of those, like just people getting to surf again is super motivational, inspiring, even for me, It keeps us going. And then, I've had some really good clients that like surf intermittently, busy family life, busy work life. And one guy got to go on a boat trip or to the Maldives. And he was like, dude, I was surfing like 4 hours a day and just not even batting an eye at it. Like it was no problem for me. So, helping somebody make the most out of like a super expensive trip, you know,
Yeah.
to take advantage of that opportunity is like, those are great wins for us. And, you know, it makes us like really feel good about what we're doing.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Sam, how about, you know, we've been talking about a bunch of advanced stuff, you know, getting barreled, but you also run a surf school. What are your top 3 tips for a, you know, a beginner to intermediate surfer that's just starting to ramp up, trying to get good, maybe trying to do turns, you know, what would you recommend there?
I always try to, when I'm teaching, you know, I just try to get people to slow things down mentally, and, you know, not, you know, when it comes to paddling, I always try to get people paddling deeper is a common thing I see, is people paddle way too high and they're not actually getting their arm in the water, especially when they're trying to catch waves. They go way faster, and the tendency when you go faster is to get shallower with your paddle. Try to get people not to kick a lot, just because 9 times out of 10, when you watch beginners start to kick, their weight shifts back and it actually prohibits them from catching the waves. You know, and just do the motions on the beach, do the stuff on the beach or at home. You know, nothing's, I made some of my best kids do hundreds of pop-ups just till they get it right, you know, and just, you know, put in the time, put in the effort on the land, because it resonates out in the ocean. And, you know, you see so many good surfers that skate, and it's so similar, so many similar movements, but it all works. They're surfing you when they're not in the ocean. So yeah, there's a lot of just small little things just to keep consistent, but a lot of it comes down to paddling and you know, just slowing things down.
All right. Very good tips. So, where's the best way for people to reach out to you if they're interested in learning more?
For Surf Health, you can just reach out to us directly on our Instagram handle, which is Surf Health Pro. Just shoot me a DM and just say, hey man, I'm interested in hearing more about the program. Pretty simple.
And the best way for the surf school is hammersurfschool.com. So I had to think for a second.
You're like, did I get that right?
Oh yeah, like yeah, but it's hammersurfschool.com, and email us and we'll take care of you. And we, you know, we do from beginners to, you know, people that are aspiring to win the East Coast Championships or nationals. So we deal with a wide range.
That's awesome. All right. Well, thanks guys. It was a pleasure to have you.
Cool, man.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah.
All right.
Thanks for having us, man.
Cool.
That was a good time.
Hey everyone, it's Van. Hopefully you've been enjoying the podcast. Hopefully you've been listening to some good stories, getting some good tips that are helping you improve as a surfer. If so, make sure to subscribe to the podcast, leave us a review. It'll only take you literally a few seconds, and share it with your friends. That's the best way you can support me, so I can continue to create awesome new content for you. So thanks.